Hello and welcome to the show. Now, one of my favourite things to do on the Horizon series is to go off-roading with rather inappropriate vehicles, and the cars will survive, the various ordeals of the dirt paths. However, there is the option to have rally parts, rally suspension and rally tyres. Now, we had that option in Horizon 2. However, the race parts were still quicker. Even taking the cars down the most off-road track that you could, it was still faster to have race parts. However, my initial impressions of Horizon 3, the off-roading was a little bit different, so I suspected that we might see the rally parts be a bit more effective, as you would expect, rally tyres to be when it comes to some off-roading. So I would set out to do an experiment to find out. Now, the first thing, of course, that we did need was a predominantly dirt course. Now, unfortunately, on Horizon 3, there are no circuits or point-to-point races that are purely off-road. There may be a cross-country, but I didn't really want to do a cross-country race. I wanted to stick to a more sort of proper route, if you like. Cross-country races, there's a lot of leeway for interpretation on the circuit, so for this I wanted to stick to as close to a rally stage as I could, and this one is a damn fine rally stage indeed. It is a little bit slower than the circuit that I'm using, or the stage that I'm using for the rally car builds. It's quite a bit more technical, a lot of very, very tight hairpins. There aren't quite the same ridiculous sized jumps either on this one. There are a fair amount of smaller bumps, there's water splashes and so on. There's everything here that you would expect a rally car to be dealing with. There aren't any, though, absolutely massive jumps. I like it. It's a really good, fun course to go driving it down as we come into the very hairpin orientated section. Now, to start off this investigation, I'm going to be taking a look at the rally tyres themselves. The car, a Mitsubishi Evo 6, was upgraded to the top of S1 class. In fact, I used the I say the wide body kit upgrade. It was the body kit upgrade option that comes with this car, is to basically stick the rally parts on and give it about 500 horsepower, rally suspension, rally tyres, etc., various lightness and so on, race brakes. So it's kind of like a pre-made rally car to begin with. I took off the rally tyres. This run at the moment, it is being run with completely standard tyres to set a benchmark, if you like, with the vehicle. And you can see in a couple of places it is certainly struggling a little bit for grip. Of course, it's still all-wheel drive. It's still not doing too badly out here. But you can see it, especially trying to put the power down out of some of the hairpins, it struggles a little bit more. We drifted wide into a wall at one point early on in the run as we leave the final corner there up towards the finish line. Yeah, good fun course to be driving down, and that was, if I did another run I did later, I went a little bit quicker. I did 3 runs with each of the various specs of the cars, that one not being the fastest of the runs. I would then go and put the vehicle on to the race tyres to see how it would compare. Would the race tyres still be, considerably faster? Would the race tyres perhaps be worse than standard tyres even when tackling a dirt road? I wasn't 100% sure. I didn't think that they would be, and sure enough, there was more grip available in this car. It did turn better through these corners. I mean, the hairpin is most notable trying to get the power down out the other side. You see, even with the race tyres on here, the car is still struggling a little bit to deploy its power. It's still spinning the wheels, it's still wasting that little bit of time. We don't quite have the same difficulties that we did on the standard tyres, but it was still notable that the car was struggling, although through the faster turns it was quite good fun. Compare that to the vehicle now clad with the rally tyres. Yes, you can still throw it about and get the car plenty sideways, but the amount of corner speed that it can take goes up dramatically as we head around the hairpin. You put the power down and there's no sort of wheel spin going on, there's no delay, even with me getting the hairpin a little bit wrong on that particular turn. It is very noticeable. It feels much, much nicer to drive as we are flying our way through this section once more. You can just carry that bit more speed through all of these turns, especially as we're getting to these much quicker corners. And it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to be pushing this car very, very hard through these turns. You have more confidence that there's going to be the grip to really chuck the car through. Again, you know, with this much power and as technical a course as this one is, yeah, you can slide the car about a fair bit if you're being a little bit too silly, but yeah, much, much more consistent, and it very much shows in the times. Standard tyres, 220.9. On the race tyres, are 215.1. 5 seconds quicker almost with the race tyres, but it's 5 seconds again faster with the rally tyres. Now, there is about a 2 PI difference between having the car on the rally tyres and the race tyres, slightly in favour of the race tyres. The race tyres put this car up into S2 class. I think it's 902, sorry. Whereas with the rally tyres, it's 900, so the top of S1 class. 5 seconds there, and it feels it. It really does feel the rally tyres so much better to be driving on the dirt stage, as you would imagine, and as I had hoped would be the case on Horizon 3. Now, that test was very much with a essentially pre-built rally car. We were just looking at the tyres on that one. It was running the rally suspension, the Evo. So, to look at the suspension, I decided to go down a little bit different route. A stock Volvo S60. I do like the S60. I went for this car because it is all-wheel drive, and again, you know, not being properly rally prepared, was interested to see how just the suspension would affect the car's time. The opening section here is, of course, the most notably bumpy. There are plenty of bumps further around the course. This is the Volvo running again on its standard suspension, offsetting a benchmark time. Actually wasn't too terrible across the bumps here as we get it turned into the hairpin. Not quite the same power in the Volvo to get it out of the other side. I then put the vehicle onto the race suspension. Now, this is a lower and stiffer suspension, good for handling when it comes to tarmac roads, but off-road, immediately things are not as comfortable in the car. You feel all of the little bumps a lot more in this, and the cars are a hell of a lot more skittish across these bumps. Now, if I get the lines perfect through here, I get everything right, with the Volvo you can still take it flat out up this section, but the car does not feel anywhere near as comfortable across these bumps. It does get thrown about that bit more, and that was just on the opening run. It just doesn't feel as happy tackling this section whatsoever as we dive it into the hairpin. Again, as we go to get on the power, you see the car being shaken about and wobbling from side to side. You don't get that on the standard suspension. It wasn't doing that with the standard suspension. On this, though, it is, again, as you would expect, it is not particularly enjoying its time through the bumpier stuff. Then fitted the car with the race suspension. Again, the PI difference is, well, the PI gains for going on to race suspension, not quite as drastic as you would get with changing the tyres. However, it is the race suspension that is a PI point or two higher than that of the rally. However, rally, really doing its job. Unlike with the race-clad car that felt very, very uncomfortable along this section. I think I did spin it at one point as well, just having it bounced around. The rally suspension, it soaked up the bumps very, very well. It was, you know, relatively straightforward for the Volvo. It is perhaps the most noticeable bit as we leave this hairpin. It's not getting chucked about, it's not vibrating almost as much. It's a little bit difficult at times to quite show it on the footage. Certainly when you're driving these cars, you really feel when you've got the vehicle, if the vehicle's on race suspension or on rally suspension, the little tiny subtle differences are very, very noticeable, and the race-clad car was not happy going down this dirt course. It really didn't like tackling any of the bumps, and once more, very evident in the times. The rally suspension of 2:32.0, fastest of the lot. The standard suspension was a second and a half quicker than the race suspension. Down here, the standard suspension, you know, a little bit higher ride height, a little bit softer to begin with, and that's much, much better for tackling this rally course. The race suspension, yeah, you can drive it down here. It's not going to tear the car apart. However, it is going to be slower. You're more likely to make mistakes. You're more likely to bounce and spin the car at places as well on that race suspension. So, both the rally tyres and the rally suspension making rather significant difference in terms of time. Now, the next thing that I wanted to investigate was whether your choice of car would affect its sort of time down this course. So I was going to build up a bunch of vehicles to A class, starting with the Lancia Delta, one of the most successful rally cars of all time, and see if building up the Lancia to A class, whether this thing would be quicker than other vehicles not designed for rallying, and build them to A class and compare their times. Now, of course, this little bit difficult to do completely fairly. I tried to pick cars that were all around a similar PI to start with, so I went for mid to high C class, and then do roughly the same upgrades to them. So they were all running the rally tyres and rally suspension. They all had the Forza Aero on them, and then I tried to go for things like race brakes, maximum weight reduction, roll cage, anti-roll bars and so on, and then any little bits of power that could be got into the vehicles to make it up to the top of A class. So I tried to be as fair as I possibly could with these vehicles. The Delta was an absolute joy to drive down this course, as you might expect really from the Lancia. This was just exquisite. Driving down the rally course, we had no real problems with the bumps. You could really attack the course with this car. Again, not quite the same power in this as we got from the Evo. Surprisingly, the Evo was a higher class than this one, so couldn't quite chuck it through the hairpins in the same manner. Didn't quite have the power to really launch it out of the corner, so I was opting to go for a smoother line. Again, you see me out a little bit wide through there, but the car is more than capable of dealing with the bumps. This corner is fantastic fun. You carry so much speed on the way into that turn. Now just a couple more corners to go through this stage. We come to the water splash and the jump. I really like the Delta. I really very much liked driving this car down the rally course as we're around the final turn off towards the finish line, and it would set a fearsome benchmark, a 2:17 from the Delta. Yeah, it was a hell of a good car. Now, up next, a Mazda MX-5. I wanted to have a go with, well, a rear-wheel drive vehicle, and you can't really go wrong when it comes to modifying an MX-5. Again, built to A-class. It is lighter than the Lancia, however, had less power, considerably less, or had almost 100 less torque than the Lancia. Still getting to roughly a similar-ish speed on its run-up through this opening bumpy section, and with the car fitted with rally suspension, it actually wasn't too bad going through here. Even with the rally suspension, you get the car at a slightly wonky angle across those bumps, and you're still going to have issues. You're hitting them very fast, and there's quite a large number of them in a small space of road there. So even with this, you could get it wrong. You saw the Mazda did get chucked around a little bit more, but that was not as much down to the car. It was just, it can happen at that section, really. And yeah, the MX-5, was perfectly drivable on its run through here. Now, another car that I built up, the Alpha 155, I wanted to build an all-wheel drive car, but trying to find another all-wheel drive car that was around the C-Class mark that wasn't a vehicle designed for rallying was this. This was the choice of vehicle. So again, car built in a very, very similar manner as I possibly could. The rally tyres, rally suspension, tyre widths were on there, weight reduction was on there. The Alpha was relatively heavy. It was £2,500. It was a couple of £100 heavier than the Lancia, about £500 heavier than the MX-5. It still, though, didn't have the power or the torque of the Delta, and by this stage I was starting to wonder if perhaps the Delta had just ended up being a really, really rather fast A-Class car, because when we come to look at the times, it does rather dominates here. That 217.4 was stupendously quick. I did go up and build a Celica GT4 as well, just for comparison. Again, another relatively similar starting class of car. The Celica, a purpose-built rally car, the GT4, did a 222.7. The Alpha, a 223.3, and the MX-5, a 224.4. Yeah, the Alpha and MX-5 were a fair way down on the Delta, but the Celica kind of put pay a little bit to the whole rally car. Have huge advantage off-road. If built correctly, I think the sort of general cars are perhaps still perfectly capable of being competitive. The Delta, certainly a monstrous A-class car, though. We have been seeing this a little bit, potentially also with the rally car build series. We saw the Ute absolutely destroy the Audi Quattro. Now, the Quattro wasn't quite the top of S1 class and was, completely stock, but still I was surprised by the size of the gap between those two. And again here, that's a massive gap from the Delta to some of these other cars. As I said, it could have just been that I struck on something with the build for the Lancia. And certainly, yes, the two rally cars do win this. I'm not sure, though, that without testing every single possible car, I'm not sure that I quite say that rally cars themselves have a massive overall advantage when it comes to off-roading. Now, for the final part of this experiment, I would get a Honda NSX, a car not at all designed to be go rallying. It's also rear-wheel drive. Would build the car up in race spec and in rally spec, if you like. Of course, we know what's going to be quicker when it comes to driving down the dirt stage here. With the various tests beforehand, we're expecting to see the rally parts be significantly faster. And indeed, this is the car being driven here with rally parts. Even without looking at the times, you could tell the NSX on the rally stuff, rally parts, if you like, was so much happier going down this course with the really lowered suspension, the race suspension. The bumps were just horrendous in this car. It was very, very skittish around that part. However, the slightly more interesting section, I'd reverse things and then take both sets of cars to a street circuit. Because, yes, we know the rally parts are going to be faster when it comes to off-roading, but what about when we go around an all-tarmac circuit, a street circuit? Because, well, PI-wise, there is actually not a huge amount of difference between, as I've been saying the whole time, the tyres and suspension combined make about 2 or 3 PI difference. It might fluctuate slightly depending on the vehicle that you're putting on, but there is very, very little in the way of difference in general between the PI of the parts. Big difference in times when it comes to the off-roading. So yeah, see what it's like with the difference in times around the circuit. There was one bump here on the track that the car was a little bit more happy doing on the rally suspension, but that was only a very, very minor part of this particular circuit. I actually quite like this layout, this street track. Plenty of fast corners for a car like this to get stuck into. The times, though, were very interesting. On the rally stage, we're talking about 5 seconds quicker with the rally setup. Sort of the results that we were expecting. We've had a little bit of a smaller gap than perhaps we might have expected. But on the street circuit is where things get interesting. We're only looking at half a second difference in lap time. Yes, it is in favour of the race setup, unsurprisingly, but that is not a very, very big gap at all, compared to the gaps that we'd been seeing between the race parts and hell, even the race part and the standard suspension on the Volvo was a bigger gap. Yes, the street circuit was a shorter run, that is true, but still, lap time-wise, that is very, very good showing from the rally parts there. So, conclusion-wise, well, most definitely if you are building a car that's going to be tackling events across multiple circuits and you don't know if you're going to be dealing with how many dirt sections and so on, go for rally parts. You are going to make up so much more time on the dirt than you're going to lose on the tarmac sections that is most definitely the way to be going. Rally parts make a very significant difference to the cars, and we're not just talking about the high-end supercars and so on. A standard Volvo S60 with the rally suspension You know, that was a big time gain from that part. So yeah, definitely something to be taken into consideration. In all honesty, I wonder if it's swung a little bit too much now in favour of rally parts. If they can keep that close around a street circuit and then be that much more effective off-roading, it's definitely the way that that you're going to want to be going with your vehicles. However, that is going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.